down there. But, you know, almost everything is backed up now on computers all over the country. There is very little records. There are very little records that are actually lost. And I think what's happened, I certainly spoke to people at Merrill Lynch. All the Merrill Lynch brokers have been in touch with all of their clients, reassuring them, retail investors saying, we're here for you, we're going to be back in business. And that kind of support, I think, has a tremendous impact on the investing public. I think that you will find when the day is done that most of the trading today has been done by institutions rather than individuals.
All right, Andy, please stand by. We're going to check in with you throughout the day. You get to keep an eye on that bug number. I'm having trouble seeing it from this angle. If I'm reading it correctly, the Dow down 490, the NASDAQ down 99. Am I seeing that correctly? It's hard. There's a lot of sun on this monitor. All right, right now we're going to go to Michael Huku, who is standing by downtown. He has a story to share with us this morning about a firefighter's dramatic experience. Hi, Michael. How you doing this morning?
Paul, I'm doing okay. As you can see, of course, the plume of white smoke that's come to symbolize the pall that's descended over the city continues to rise. Firefighters are telling us that there are fires that are raging deep within the rubble, and they can't stop those fires until they move some of the debris from that area. One of the firefighters who has been working on this scene is Kenny Haskell. He joins me now, and he has an extraordinary story to tell us. Kenny, you have two brothers who are firefighters who responded to the scene last Tuesday.
Right.
Tell me if you can what happened.
Timmy's a firefighter in Squad 18, which is here in Manhattan. My brother Tommy is the captain of Ladder Company 132 in Brooklyn. Initially, a fire of this magnitude necessitates a multiple alarm response. So Tommy's company had come in from Brooklyn actually on the first call, which was immediately a fifth alarm. I was home myself at the time when I heard it on the news, and they were recalling all firemen to come into the city if they were off duty to report to their firehouses, which is what I did. And as I was on my way in, I was trying to inquire whether or not Timmy and Tommy were in fact both working. I wasn't sure at the time. It wasn't until I actually got in here into Manhattan at sometime that night, 8, 9 o'clock at night, that I saw some people that confirmed that they were both in fact inside the buildings when they came down.
So as far as you know right now, one of your brothers has been found dead.
Timmy's been found. He was found several days ago. I was underneath Tower 1, a void of Tower 1, the day before yesterday when word had spread that they had found him, and some of the members from my company came and got me, and they told me that Timmy had been found, and I left, and they had sent the van to pick me up.
Now, you have another brother who's not a firefighter, but you were telling me earlier that both of you went in and literally were working the site.
That's right.
Looking for your brother.
Kevin had actually gone back with me Wednesday morning when I went back. He was helping me search, which is, I guess, a bittersweet type of thing. It's hard to describe. It was surreal. But I was very grateful to have him there. It made it somewhat easier to deal with. To know I was looking for two of my brothers and still have one by my side was comforting.
I tell you, I've done a number of interviews since this happened on Tuesday, and frankly, as I told you before the cameras are rolling, it's uncomfortable for me to actually even talk to you about this and to give some of the grim details about what's going on beneath the soot and debris in the World Trade Center. How is it for you personally to continue working this site as a volunteer firefighter when you know that you have lost two brothers?
Obviously, it's very difficult. I come here every day filled with optimism that I am in fact going to find my brother Tommy alive, and that's what motivates me, pushes me to continue looking. Obviously, it's difficult, but this is also my job. It's what's expected of me, and I do it right away.
This is a very difficult question, but the very grim reality of this is that rescue workers are telling us they're finding more body parts than they're actually finding bodies. You have been in there, and you have seen that. That has got to be very difficult for you personally.
Well,
why continue working the site?
On Wednesday, I was actually involved with the rescue of a female who was alive, and that lifted my spirits, obviously. We were able to find someone alive and rescue her and save her life. And I'm convinced that there are still people in there. There's tremendous voids, some of which you could actually walk into. There's a hope. We're hoping that many of these people were fortunate enough to land into these voids, and the rubble that was coming down around them was actually, the steel that surrounded them actually sheltered them from the remaining debris. That's what we're looking for. Obviously, our window of opportunity is decreasing as time goes by, but if we can somehow get into the towers and make a deeper push to some of the sub-levels, I think we will find some people alive.
Kenny, thank you for talking to us, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Paula, as you can see, an extraordinary story, one of the many stories of heroism here. Not just one firefighter, but three. Just not all of them made it. Back to you.
Thanks, Michael. As you're standing there, I just want to tell a quick story about some of the firefighters I met this morning on the way into work. They came in from the Los Angeles Fire Department, and in fact, on Tuesday, one of them had been in touch with a New York firefighter that gave them a description of what it was like to go into the debris, described it as walking into a tornado, followed by the sensation of trying to ride a wave in heavy surf. And fortunately, that one fire department official from New York did survive the collapse of the first tower. So the stories that you're sharing with us, Michael, today are unfortunately stories that are repeated over and over again. Okay, Michael, thanks so much. We will check back in with you a little bit this morning. If you look at the far right-hand corner of the screen, you can see the Dow is down 545 points at this hour. The NASDAQ down 103 points. Joining me right now is Maria Ramirez. Maria Ramirez. You don't want to say that really fast. Who has some insights into the 1/2 point rate cut today and what the markets might be doing. For starters, let's talk about the rate cut. Lou Dobbs reported early this morning it was expected, and he doesn't expect it to move the markets all that much today. Well, what do you think?
I do think that as of Friday, the 50 basis points rate cut that the Fed just announced this morning was pretty much priced into the market. But I think that more than what the Fed has done is what the Fed is likely to do and what we're likely to get as a stimulus to the economy that might be more important than interest rate cuts.
And that would be what?
And that would be, I think, government spending, fiscal spending that you have, I think, locally and at the federal level, because we know that the tax cut so far hasn't really done much. But I do think that the additional stimulus in spending, although it might be more located right here, certainly is going to help the economy to revive itself.
Can you even begin to imagine what kind of debate that will be on Capitol Hill? I mean, obviously, no one wants the United States to go in a recession, but at a time when there's a battle over the Social Security Trust Fund and Medicare and Medicaid, you can imagine that is going to be, there will be a lot of bloodletting, no?
Well, I do think that all those issues are in the back burner right now, because I think people are worrying more about the short term, and I think that the cohesiveness that we have in Washington right now, I think throughout the nation, in terms of the spirit, it's very much unified. I think that the disagreement that they would have had a week ago, really, sort of history right now, because I think that the primary thing right now is to get things sort of upstarted and united in a united effort on all fronts. So I do think that there's pretty much a clear way. Whatever needs to be spent, it's going to be spent, and then we'll take care of that after, other issues after.
I didn't get to say this in the introduction to you, but you, of course, are an economist, but you also happen to be a World Trade Center survivor. Where were you on the day of the attacks?
Well, at 8:30 in the morning, I had a meeting at 2 World Trade Center, visiting one of our clients on the 55th floor of 2 World Trade Center, and of course, as everybody stated, about 10:02, I heard a loud thundering noise. I thought it was something on top of the building, but immediately there were things flying around on fire, like paper on fire and metal. So I made my way down to the 38th floor, walked through the staircase, but it wasn't moving very fast. So I took an elevator, something that you probably shouldn't do, but my gut instinct was that the elevators were probably working, and there was an express elevator to the first floor. I crossed the street, went into our building, which our office is on 1 Liberty, and as soon as I walked into our building, then the other plane came, and of course the rest is pretty disastrous.
Basically what you're saying, your life was saved by doing something that every investigator tells you not to do.
Right.
If you hadn't gotten out at that point.
And exactly when
the collapse of the building didn't follow that far after.
The problem was that when I got to the first floor of the building, basically security was saying that everything was safe in the building, which it was, because nobody knew what was going on, and to calm down. But my instinct was that you shouldn't be calm, you should run away from a disaster. And I ran down the pace, actually, the school that I went to, and I stayed in the library. And as soon as I walked into the building, then one of the buildings came down. Of course, there was mass pandemonium and you couldn't see anything outside. But I'm glad I followed my instinct. I think most of the people did. And I think that for those that had their instincts and couldn't get out, it's a horrendous tragedies that I think will affect all of us, either if we were there or not, the rest of our lives.
You are one lucky woman. Come back to the psyche of the folks in our massive audience who are investing today. They're looking at these numbers. The Dow now found down 580 points, the NASDAQ down 103. What's the best piece of advice you can leave those investors with today?
I think it's you stay put. The market right now is in a free fall. I think the U.S. economy is resilient, and I think that we'll come out of whatever problems we have. We still are the best place in the world, I think, economically speaking. So I think that even this is something that will come through okay. But I do think that the best thing to do is to stay put and not to panic, because probably that's what people will like us to see on the other side of our enemies, basically.
What is your reaction to what Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill told Lou Dobbs on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange? Quote, we will set records in the not too distant future.
I hope
some
so.
would say, and I've heard some of the experts out here this morning say he's smoking something. Is he being overly optimistic?
Well, I think that it's good for us to be optimistic. I do think that...
But overly optimistic is a salient word.
I think that the last time we went through a recession, it was 2 quarters, and the financial system in the U.S. was really in bad shape. The financial system is in good shape. I think U.S. companies are generally in good shape. The U.S. consumer, I think even though we've seen some bad numbers, I think that we'll have not a long, drawn-out recession. I think we have a couple of quarters probably negative growth, and the second quarter might have been negative already. Third quarter doesn't look that great, but I don't think it's going to be a long malaise that we used to have in the old cycles, where the recessions to be a lot steeper, a lot longer.
Maria Ramirez, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your perspective. Let's go back to Lou Dobbs, who is standing by on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with Christine Roman. Hey, Lou, talk about standing in the right place at the right time. How did you pull that off? I saw Mayor Giuliani coming to the picture, but I didn't see the governor and the other senators as they came into your circle.
Well, Senators Schumer and Clinton obviously here with Governor Pataki and Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, the governor and the mayor leading the rescue efforts and trying to get this area back. Obviously there to support this market, and Dick Grasso, the chairman. Paula, we have, by the way, a market that right now is turning decidedly more negative than when we last talked. The tick off 831. And the Dow is now off just about 570 points. The NASDAQ continues to bounce around. It's off about 100. But the word that Christine Romans, our floor correspondent here at the New York Stock Exchange, and I've been hearing for the last little while, the word is sell.
There are a lot of sell orders out there, Lou. American Express still isn't open yet, so we only have 29 of the 30 Dow components open for trade now. If American Express opens sharply lower, that means you're going to see even bigger losses on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. A lot of the airline stocks aren't open yet, and there are big sell orders there. Continental Airlines indicated down as much as $20 a share. Delta also indicated down sharply, not quite $20, but maybe 6 or 7. Defense stocks, though, indicated higher, as are the drug stocks. So it's your typical defensive type buying in terms of stock market psychology that it looks like is going to play out here. All the traders, though, say wait to see what happens at the end of the day. You got 4 days of nervousness. A big sell-off was expected. We just have to see what investors do after that.
And Christine, Paula, we're also, our volume right now is almost 333 million shares. We've been open just a little over a half hour. Typically what we've been having here is a volume on certainly midday, midweek, a little over $1 billion, sometimes less than that in either Mondays or Fridays, right?
This is the time of year when we start to have volume come back because it's September. It's also 4 days with the market closed. There's everyday buying, selling that still needs to be done from last week, plus all of this uncertainty in the market. Traders here are telling me they expect a big volume day here, Lou, simply because, there's a lot of pent-up demand to buy and sell stocks, and because of what's happened in the last week. They expect it to be $2 billion plus.
Do you think it's fair to say that what we're watching here today, even though we've got a dramatic downturn in the Dow Jones Industrials, which is, by the way, I believe this is the lowest intraday dip ever, 575 points, not on a percentage basis, but in absolute points. It looks like an orderly market.
It is a very orderly market here overall. We haven't hit any triggers, obviously, in the Dow. You've got a lot more to go before any kind of circuit breakers will come into play. And traders are saying that they are ready to go back to work. They're fully staffed. They've been sitting there. They also point out that there's a lot of money on the sidelines. So maybe you're going to have people coming in, bargain hunting a bit. You know, maybe this is the time to come. Maybe this is that capitulation everyone's been talking about. Who knows?
Well, it certainly is in the first less than an hour as something of a capitulation. And to give you some sense of just how dramatic this sell-off is, GE, which is, if there is a blue chip, certainly GE is the blue chip, when it was last off just about $4 a share. So when you see that kind of pressure in the first 45 minutes of trading on a company like that, it's a good indicator of the pressure.
Yeah, Boeing is lower as well. United Technology is lower. There's some big names trading very sharply lower here today. And the Dow only 19 points above the 9,000 mark. So we are below the lowest intraday level of 2.5 years, Lou, for this market today.
Christine, Andy Serwer, Fortune magazine is also with us, and I'd like to just turn to you, Andy. We've got this environment. It's awfully difficult. No, it's impossible to make anything of a market in the first hour of trading, but we have just gone below the previous decline of 585. We're now down 628 points. What is your sense of what we can expect here, Andy?
Well, you know, Lou, it's anyone's bet at this point. The trading strategies are all over the place, so we do know that a drop of 1,100 points in the Dow would prompt a 1-hour halt in trading at the NYSE. We're a ways away from that, and it's hard to imagine that we'd hit it, although I should say, again, who knows at this point. You know, I spoke with Michael Price, who's a legendary trader, and he suggested that he thought the Dow might even be up at the end of the day. Hard to believe at this point, Lou, but you and I both know how dramatically things can shift even in an ordinary type of day, and this is no ordinary day.
Exactly. And Christine, as we look here at about 623 points off on the Dow, what's your thought? Are we going to see it bounce around here, or is the direction set? How's that for putting you on the spot?
Yeah, thanks, Lou. I think the direction is set for today. I think 600 points is something that's very difficult to overcome in the very first few minutes of trading here. Traders were saying that the path of least resistance was lower even before this tragedy on Lower Manhattan. So now this added uncertainty only inspires the sellers here today. We have to just see if it remains an orderly market. A lot of people have been telling me over the past few days, nobody makes money in a panicky market by selling. You make money by keeping your long-term view. And they say, just as they did 2 weeks ago when people were worried about the market at 3-year low for the S&P 500, know why you own your stocks, know what your long-term view is, and don't deviate for that for short-term reasons.
We're watching some huge blocks in both Bank of America and Home Depot. We also just saw large blocks going over in GE. Now, those are highly liquid stocks, a lot of shares. What do you make of that?
Well, it's to be expected. With the market closed 4 days, you got a lot of buying and selling, as I said, the daily kind of stuff that mutual funds do. As well, those are our very highly liquid stocks. GE, remember, came out and warned this weekend on its quarter, taking 4 cents off its number because of an insurance company it owns. It expects to lose some money because of this World Trade Center bombing. So a warning from GE, a big dog on Wall Street, one of the big stocks traders like to buy. It is the most actively traded stock here, no surprise there.
Okay, Andy, let me put you on the spot as well. You think the direction is set?
Yeah, I agree with Christine. I think it's going to be hard to overcome it. I think anyone who thinks we're going to end up in plus territory may be dreaming. Lou, just a point here, the largest Dow drop in point terms was 617 April of 2000. So just to give you a sense of how substantial the drop is today, and we could break that mark, of course, easily.
And I'd love to jump in here with all three of you, Lou and Christine, as you talk about some of these stocks that have suffered some major drops. It makes one wonder if some of them were overpriced to begin with.
That's a great point, Paula. Did you hear that, Christine? I wanted to make sure. Paula was asking if perhaps these stocks were overvalued to begin with. And I'll give you first I'm going to give you first Christine's answer, and then I'll answer if I may, Paula.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, this market, by earnings guidelines, was definitely overvalued to begin with, but a lot of these stocks are trading near 52-week lows, and some folks are telling me that with so much negativity already built into some stocks, there might not be much more to go on the downside.
Paula, if I may, Andy, just jump in here real quickly and answer that question from at least my perspective. When we talk about overvaluation, you know, that's always subjective, and the market makes the determination ultimately. The market is making a very important determination today. I think your point, Paula, is exact. We still hadn't had the full correction in some of these values, and you price that into today's activity, and you see some further weakness. It is not simply a reaction just to the last 4 days that the market was closed. But the one thing that I truly believe this, markets are never, ever wrong. And this market, however it ends, whether it ends, as both Andy and Christine suggest, down from here, or even a remote possibility perhaps, but still a possibility that it end higher, the market is really working. And that's what's critical.
All right, you two, just one last question for Andy, who sits beside me with the market down 598 points now. What about gold? What are we hearing about those trades?
Well, you know, gold has been way up over the past couple days, getting towards that magical $300 price. It hasn't gotten there yet. It's around $290. But, you know, this has always been a real bugaboo. When we see panic, when we see turmoil, the price of gold goes up, and of course it's been up. But it's really not a great long-term strategy. Over the past 20, 30 years, the price of gold has gone absolutely nowhere. And for people who are thinking of selling stocks now and buying gold, I would suggest that it might be more prudent to sit on the sidelines. One other point I just want to make, Paula, and Lou sort of touched on this too, I think a little bit, is that what we're forgetting here, one thing we may be forgotten, is that the markets are working. That was a huge concern, that there'd be all sorts of disruptions, the telephones wouldn't work, the computers wouldn't work. Sure, the market's down 500 or 600 points, but it is orderly, it is working. There are no malfunctions. A few stocks haven't opened, but that happens all the time anyway. And so I think we really should be thankful that the system is back.
All right, thanks so much for that update, Andy. Right now we're going to head back to Washington, D.C., where John King stands by with an important interview. Hi again, John.
Hello again to you, Paula, and an important interview indeed. Joining us in Atlanta studios today, the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, a key voice as the U.S. government decides how to respond to these terrorist attacks, not only as the President mulls his military options, but with the events unfolding up on Wall Street this morning. Mr. Speaker, thank you for joining us. Let me ask you first, good morning to you, sir. As you see the developments in the market today, obviously a great deal of anxiety on Wall Street, here in Washington as well, about how these terrorist strikes will impact the U.S. economy. What is your thinking on that, sir, and specifically what can and might the U.S. Congress do to help?
Well, there's two things we need to do. First of all, I talked to Leader Gephardt yesterday and a couple days ago that we need to try to look over the horizon right now. We need to find what the right formula is to sustain and give this market the shoring and people the confidence that this market's there. You know, the American people are great people. We're resilient people. Our markets are resilient. This is kind of like us old people sitting back and watching the kids ride the roller coaster. We don't know what's going to come to the bottom, what's going to happen when they start up again. But we need to do some mix, whether it's capital gains or investment tax credits, some type of thing to shore up this market, to give people the confidence that they need to invest, that that's the best investment that folks can make. And there is a lot of money on the sidelines. People have cashed out a lot of things, and those dollars are there. We need to give the people the confidence that this country is going to move forward, and they have the investment and financial future before them.
Help our viewers, sir, understand to what degree is there coordination? The Federal Reserve cut key interest rates by 0.5 point just before the markets open, obviously designed to help infuse some confidence in the markets. The President and other administration officials speaking not only to yourself and other key members of Congress, but to banks and investment houses and key leaders around the world. Explain, if you can, the detail of coordination here, as the administration obviously and the Congress has concerns about the economy.
Well, right now, the last couple of days, we're trying to just keep this country going, and we haven't talked a lot about markets, but I did talk to, I said, Leader Gephardt. We're having a meeting this week with key economists and folks from the market and the administration to lay out what our strategy is. We hope to move some legislation either this week or next week to lay the foundation for that. We're also concerned about the airline industry, and we started last week, or just Thursday night, to try to move some legislation that shores up the airline industry short term, especially for the loss in passengers that they've suffered the last couple days. And of course, they're a cash flow industry. We need to make sure that America keeps flying, because that's very, very important to keep this country going.
Another package of legislation coming your way will come from the Justice Department and Attorney General Ashcroft. He wants new powers for wiretappings to track money laundering and terrorist groups. Most supportive so far, but many raising questions about civil liberties here. In your view, specifically with regards to this package, but much more broadly as well, will Americans have to give up some freedoms now in the name of improved security?
Well, trying to keep the balance on civil liberties is really the important issue. I've said for a long time, money launderers in this country are really the cause of a lot of the drug problems we have. And we know that Osama bin Laden has got a lot of the money from the drug trade across Central Asia and other places, and money launderers are the way that he gets the dollars in his pocket that he has to spend to perpetrate these types of things. So we need to be able to crack down on money launderers. I think we need to have new powers in that area. Those other issues we'll take one by one, go through our judicial committees, and try to make sure we have the right balance.
Mr. Speaker, you are being repeatedly updated by the administration, not only the status of the investigation, but I want to ask you this question, sir, as our viewers here in the United States and around the world watch. When you get intelligence briefings from the administration, what are they telling you about the current threat? Do they believe there is still a risk of terrorist attack here in Washington and around the country?
Well, I think we need to be prudent. We don't know what that risk is. We think most of those people have been watched, and we know where their whereabouts are. Some of them are being apprehended as we speak. But you never know, and I think every American needs to be somewhat prudent. But we think that risk has turned down. Terrorism is, first of all, a strike, and then they play off of everybody's fears after that. We need to be brave, we need to move forward, but we also need to be prudent.
As the president mulls his military options, a week or so ago, sir, and this may seem a little bit in poor taste, but a week or so ago, the great debate in Washington was about dipping into the Social Security surplus and where did the big federal budget surplus go. As you look now at the things the administration is asking for the investigation, for the recovery effort, no doubt in your mind, obviously, that we will have to dip into Social Security spending here. Any sense at all of the impact of that on the U.S. government's financial situation?
Well, we have to do the fiscal and monetary things that are the right things to do. Any first-year economics students will tell you that. We passed a $40 billion bill on Friday to give the president, first of all, the ability to carry out his war against the folks that perpetrated this crime. The second thing we did was to make sure that we have the things in place for FEMA so that they can continue to take care of the victims and clean up the aftermath of this. We're also looking to make sure that we have the dollars in place so that we can put on the security for our air travel across this country. Those things are taking some of those dollars. And then, of course, $20 billion there to help the cleanup and the trauma that's happened in New York City. We don't know if that's the iceberg or just the tip of the iceberg, but the real issue is we need to give the president the powers and his ability and the dollars to be able to go out and smoke these people out of their shadows.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to close by asking you finally about your personal thoughts. After the vice president, you are next in the line of succession to the presidency. And in Washington, when they realized there was this threat of terrorist attack, and indeed sites in Washington targeted, you were spirited away to a secret location outside of Washington to a secure bunker. Explain to us your thoughts and exactly what happened to you as all this unfolded last Tuesday.
Well, first of all, I was in my office early. We heard the first damage to the World Trade Center, and everybody thought it was an accident. And then when the second one happened, we knew it wasn't. And then, of course, I looked out my window, and the smoke and flames were coming out of the Pentagon. At that point, I decided that the prudent thing was to adjourn Congress and to let everybody go. And we were going to move to the floor to adjourn. And at that time, we had several of our, not Secret Service, but U.S. Capitol Police whisked me away as we were flying in a helicopter skirting Washington, looking down at that smoke that was moving over Northern Virginia, flames and smoke coming out of the Pentagon. I thought I'd never see that ever in my lifetime. You know, the Capitol had never been moved out of, except for the War of 1812 when it was burnt. It certainly is the symbol, and it made you sick at heart. But yet, when we came back that night, and the four leaders stood in front of 100 or 200 members of the Congress, and we stood shoulder to shoulder on a bipartisan basis, and we're going to see this thing through with the administration, the president, and the American people. And members behind us broke out spontaneously, and God bless America, sent a shiver down my spine and a resolve that we will see this through, and we're going to stand together all as Americans until it's over.
All right, the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, joining us today from our studios in Atlanta. We thank you very much, sir, for your time at these very trying times. Thank you very much again. We hope to speak to you soon. And now, back to Paula Zahn in New York.
John, I'm not going to let you get away so soon. I wanted to ask you about a couple of things that Mr. Hastert touched upon with you. He talked about Congress's concern about the health of the airline industry and touched upon a short-term bailout that is being debated right now. Is that something that's likely to have major support for?
Yes, indeed it does have major support, Paula. It was held up over the weekend, we understand, by the objection of one or two lawmakers who did not want it being considered in the middle of the night. It came up overnight after midnight. The Congress was considering it, and we know Representative Lloyd Doggett, a Democrat of Texas, among those who said, if this is a package that has such support, why don't we debate it in the daylight? But this is a package backed by the President, backed by the Democratic leaders in the House and the Senate, backed by the Speaker as well. It's about $2.5 billion in direct aid to the airline industry, and then some various government loan guarantees that I believe total in the area of another $15 billion. So this package likely to move when the Congress comes back to work on Wednesday, likely to move it in several days after that.
The House Speaker also urged Americans for the need to invest and said this, in fact, is the best investment they can make in the economy, to sort of not lose patience with their investments. But, John, you've probably heard a couple of economists repeating over and over again how important it's going to be to get the government to spend during this period of time. How will that push affect the budget battles?
Well, the government certainly will be spending on the unfortunate nature of this crisis, the rescue and recovery effort, the investigation, a military buildup that is underway. But certainly, as you heard the Speaker said, they are debating other things. There was to be this very week, a big partisan debate over was the President squandering the surplus? Was the tax cut too big? Instead, now you have bipartisan agreement, and there will be some disagreements along the way over the specifics, make no doubt about it, but bipartisan agreement that there should be government spending, that the President and the recovery effort should get all the money it needs for that, and there's even a debate now about another round of tax cuts, something like a capital gains tax cut that would help the markets. This is a remarkable attitude and cooperative spirit here in Washington right now. There will be some bumps along the road, no question. Some worried that in this atmosphere of crisis the Congress might go too far, but look for more government spending in the short term and look for the possibility of at least another targeted tax cut.
From a New York perspective, it's been interesting to watch some of the comments Senator Clinton has made in the last couple of days and Senator Schumer. They're giving the President a great deal of credit for answering their call for support, not for just those victimized here, but those victimized in Pennsylvania and in Washington. How long do you think this bipartisan show of unity can last?
Well, that is a significant and legitimate question. Certainly, as long as you see the moving pictures that you are so much closer to up in New York, and as long as just across the Potomac here, you see the pictures over at the Pentagon, everyone agrees the reaction so far has been heartwarming and bipartisan. Certainly for the foreseeable future, we see no change in that at all. Again, there will be some disagreements along the way, but there is always in the country a rally around the President movement at times of crisis, and Democrats and Republican alike saying his phone line has been open, his advisors have been helpful. Senator Schumer saying when the initial proposal was $20 billion in short-term spending, he said, look, Mr. President, that's just enough for New York. And the President said, you got it. And they doubled that in a matter of minutes. So the President drawing praise right now, and they do understand at the White House, this is a President in office fewer than 9 months now. The eyes of the nation on him, indeed the eyes of the world on him, a defining moment for the country and a testing moment for this President.
John, I know you were in the process of interviewing Speaker Hastert when the market dropped now down to, 514 points. Have you gotten any response from the White House directly to what is going on right now on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange?
In good times and bad times, and even now in the worst of times, the White House refusing to comment specifically on the movements of the markets. The White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer telling reporters a short time ago that, and it's a standard line at the White House, that the fundamentals of the U.S. economy remain strong, that the President and his senior economic team, and by the way, the President will meet with them this afternoon to discuss the day's events in the markets, that the White House believing the fundamentals are strong. The White House does not comment on specific market moves, nor does it comment on the specific moves of the Federal Reserve. Behind the scenes, they were encouraged, though, that Chairman Greenspan and the Fed cut rates today, and they believe that this first day might be the worst day, and that after that, the markets will stabilize and hopefully, in the views of the administration, rally in the days ahead.
Okay, John, I only have time for one last question. The other thing that caught my ear in your interview with Speaker Hastert is you asked a very direct question about whether the United States continues to be at risk for another terrorist attack, and his answer was, quote, "We don't know what that risk is." Give us your perspective on that, and what other members of Congress are saying.
Well, in briefings, intelligence briefings and the investigative briefings, members of Congress are being told that there are believed to be, still in this country, small terrorist cells, people affiliated, aligned with, and associated with those believed responsible for these attacks. That's why we have seen the warrants issued for material witnesses, the FBI saying this is an unprecedented investigation. One of the concerns raised early on was that if the President had decided to act immediately and, say, launch cruise missile strikes against sites in Afghanistan, bin Laden camps in Afghanistan, that there were still terrorists running around the United States who might respond by going after major population centers. So quite a bit of tension in the investigative ranks. No one saying at this moment, based on our information, there are any specific threats, any credible specific targets right now, but there is still a fear of a risk of a continuing terrorist attack.
All right, John, we'll be with you throughout the rest of the morning. We get just about an hour and a half left before noon. Thank you, John. Right now we're going to check in with Greg Clarkin, who joins us for the NASDAQ market site. NASDAQ down some 84 points. The reaction from there, Greg?
And Paul, I'll tell you right now, in the first 60 minutes of trade, at least, the market's really behaving as many folks anticipated and really expected. We saw a big burst of selling at the open of the markets, and then on the NASDAQ, at least, things have really stabilized. What we saw is the composite down better than 100 points for much of the last hour. Right now, the composite is down about 83 points. 1611 is the level. Now, we have to tell you, though, in terms of decliners and advancers, for every one stock that is making ground today, we're seeing 5 stocks losing ground. Among the biggest losers, as expected, the airline stocks. The ones that trade here on the NASDAQ include SkyWest. That is down almost 41% at the moment. We have Mesa Airlines down almost 42%. And then Priceline.com, the online travel operation where you can pretty much name your own price for a flight, that is also being hammered today. It's down 40%. Actually, we have found a few winners, though. One of the biggest percentage gainers today, Envision Technologies. And these are folks that make systems, explosive detection systems used in airports to detect explosives and baggage. That stock, take a look at it, up 195%. We had seen that stock up better than 200% a few moments ago. So some of those companies that folks believe will stand to see increased business out of this tragedy gaining ground today. But overall, though, Paul, make no mistake about it, we are seeing a lot of downside selling pressure. And this is really where things get a little tricky. Again, the markets kind of did as expected. They sold off after 4 days of downtime, a lot of pent-up demand to sell. So that was taken care of. A lot of big institutional investors, the folks that run those portfolios, the money managers and the like, they had been quoted over the weekend as saying that they were going to sit out the open, see where things were going before they got involved in the market. So this, again, is kind of a critical point, and folks are going to be watching the action of the market, between now and noon at least, very carefully today to get some sense as to where this thing may go for the rest of the day. Right now, Paula, down about 82 points, 1613 is the level. Back to you.
All right, Greg, let's go back to a point you were making earlier on about the airline stocks and some of those stocks dropping. Speaker Hastert, in an interview with John King, just talked about wanting to move forward the legislation Congress is considering for a short-term bailout. Is that likely to have any impact on what the stocks do today?
In the immediate term, Paul, I was listening to that interview. I was watching the stocks behind me here on the wall to see if there was any, short-term reaction. Sometimes things like that will be broadcast, maybe hit the wires, you get a little pop. There was no reaction. So at the moment, at least, until the airline industry gets a better sense as to, how the progress is being made on that front, you're likely to see this increased selling pressure on these stocks, especially the smaller airlines. Those are the ones that are particularly vulnerable. The airlines were in a tough business environment to start with before this tragedy, and this tragedy is expected to be kind of a death knell personnel for some of the smaller airlines. So those folks very vulnerable. And again, the airline industry, investors are really going to want to get a better sense of progress on that front, real tangible progress, probably before we start to see a corner rather being turned for some of those stocks.
All right, thanks so much, Greg. See you a little bit later on in the day. Let's go back to Lou Dobbs, who rejoins us from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Lou, I wanted to ask you a question with something that Anders Sewer and I were talking about from Fortune magazine, and he was sort of making the point that the European markets also dropped 5% and then they stabilized. Do you think it's possible that might happen with U.S. markets today? Are you all but certain that's not going to happen?
Well, as you heard our colleagues, Andy Serwer and Christine Romans, they think the direction is set. They have a lot of support for those views, with the up volume running just about an eighth of the down volume with these indexes. But the indexes are improving, as you're seeing there, Paula. We have seen the tick go down into the minus 300, still negative without question, but that's off about negative 1,200. That's an indication of leading trades, and it suggests that we have at least some abating of the weakness for at least a short period of time in this market. So I'm personally not willing to say that this market will finish down at all. There's just too much uncertainty, and I would disagree with Brian about the direction of the market based on anything that happened in either Europe or Asia, for that matter. This is a unique market. It's the capital value of this market dwarfs them. Europe combined does not amount to the New York Stock Exchange. So I just think it's very difficult to take a lead from that market.
I want to continue to call attention to your multiple coup today, when you were somehow able to, in the course of one interview Mayor Giuliani, Governor Pataki, Senator Schumer, Senator Clinton, and Treasury Secretary O'Neill. He made a prediction that I wanted you to react to. He said, quote, "We will set records in the not too distant future." Is that possible?
Well, I suppose one could be somewhat flippant on a day like this and point out he didn't say records to what direction, either the upside or the downside.
I noticed that, Lou. I was listening carefully. I picked up on that too.
But Paula, the Treasury Secretary has been bullish on this economy for some time. He remains so. He has a lot of very good company, by the way. Jack Welch, Warren Buffett, and a host of others as well. So, he has a reason for that forecast. He believes, as do many of us, in the fundamental strength of this economy. The consumer, despite everything, has stayed with this economy. We've certainly seen some signs of slight weakness here in the last month or so in a couple of areas, but the consumer stays strong. So the Secretary of Treasury has a lot of good evidence and history on his side.
I wanted to bring up something that Chairman Grasso also told you. He said, if you bet against America, you are dead wrong. I know that on the internet, individual American investors have been encouraged to buy stock, to buy American today. Will we see any evidence of that, those small kinds of efforts to prop up this market?
Paula, I personally, and this is simply a personal viewpoint, what makes this country great and what makes these markets great is that they are markets of an economy and a society of choice. I think that people who vote with their pocketbooks rather than their economic self-interest probably, they certainly have every right to. I support that right. I think the smartest thing for investors to do is to take the long view. The long view, by the way, means not to sell in a panic, and certainly not to sell for reasons that might attend today's opening, for example, and to look to long-term value. That said, these markets, invariably, they may disappoint us, but they will also on those occasions not be wrong. So I would just say that patriotism, which I admire, respect, and join in, is probably best left to say, let's support these markets, let's keep choice open, salute the men and women who've opened these markets, and let these markets perform their just critical function in our democratic capitalist society.
Sure, I know you're imploring investors to take the long view, but Andy Serwer also told me that traditionally in October, can be a pretty tough time for investors. Take a short-term look for us.
Okay, I'll take a short-term look. Short-term, September turns out to be a worse month historically than does October. And also, history, while prologue is certainly not a definitive predictor or indicator, and certainly not determinant of what will happen, there is nothing surrounding today's historic opening of the New York Stock Exchange after being closed for 4 days that is rooted anywhere in my judgment in history. There is just no event that comes close to the cataclysm that we have experienced in this country. There is, whether one looks to the beginning of World War II, World War I, the beginning of the Korean War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, there's just nothing like it. We have very little here that, in historical terms, it suggests to me the outcome of a day's trading activity or even a week's. That said, I believe that we can confidently say that this economy and these markets have over time, and a lot of time, better than 2 centuries, demonstrated that they work and work very well.
Lou, I know you can't see the monitor right now, but you're going to have a lot of competition visually today. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you see the Dow and NASDAQ bug. CNN is now adding the stock ticker from our sister network, CNN FN, to give our viewers a more complete picture of the stock market. So we will count on you for guidance throughout the day. Thank you so much for your insights right now, and again, congratulations on that sixsome that you interviewed there. That was quite stunning.
Those folks obviously here to celebrate along with the rest of us the opening of this market, and it's quite a day.
All right, thanks so much, Lou.
Thank you, Paula.
Right now, we wanted to give you an idea of some of what's going on in New York City now as we look at the around-the-clock rescue operation underway. We have reports that some of New York's great chefs are cooking up meals for those toiling away at Ground Zero now. And not far from the wreckage site, workers can now board the cruise ship, the Spirit of New York. There they can get hot and cold meals prepared by some of New York's best restaurants. And even though the boat provides a break, we're told it is still so close to Ground Zero that you can actually see and smell the smoke from the wreckage. Let's go back to Bill Hemmer, who joins us from outside the stock exchange to be filled in on some of what he's heard from workers there. Hi again, Bill.
Hey, Paula, good morning. Once again, I can tell you in the 5 hours we've been down here, this is the quietest we have seen Broad Street. Again, just about a half block away from the front facade of the New York Stock Exchange. People at this point clearly have made their way into their offices, and they're watching along with us as we watch the markets tick away at this point, open for more than an hour at this point. The work continues, though. We've seen electrical workers down here, construction crews, again, trying to relay the infrastructure that was damaged this past week. And Paula, quickly here, I want to bring in Reno Eterno. He's with Con Edison, the main electricity supplier here in the city of New York. Reno, good morning to you. You've been here throughout the week trying to reestablish connections and cable lines. Specifically at this point, what have you been able to do?
Well, we've been setting up temporary cables throughout the area just to get them going for the temporary. Then in a few weeks, hopefully, we'll put in the permanent stuff.
When you say temporary, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's the same cable, but you wouldn't have time to dig up the streets. So we're just laying them out, boxing them up, making sure they're safe.
Okay,
so that
we're
you
on
get
Broad
power
Street,
right
but on Broadway, early this morning, we saw a number of streets that had already been torn up.
Yeah, we're working on that too. Some sections we are able to go in, trench it out and put cables in. But it's also gas, too. It's not just electric. There's a lot of stuff going on.
What are you hearing right now about how far you've gone, how much farther you may have to go from here?
It's hard to say. We hear, we're like you. We hear a few weeks of work. At some points, then you hear we might be here to January. You never know.
Well, we have not heard reports yet today about phone lines or electricity being a problem just yet, based on what you've done. Yeah. What are you hearing?
No problems. They tested yesterday for the stock exchange. Everything went great. And again, we're like everyone else. Hopefully everything goes good.
Yeah, sure. And I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know you're not a supervisor and the man in charge, but what are you hearing about the buildings around here in terms of electricity, power supply, etc.?
Yeah, I know they shut off a lot of stuff for safety reasons. Haven't heard anything as far as when they're coming on.
Keep on doing a good job, okay? How do you feel being back, by the way?
I think we need it to come back as soon as possible.
Okay.
You know, just for everything for the country.
Good luck. Reno, thanks. Reno Turner with Con Edison, the main electricity supplier here. Quickly here, Paula, listening to Lou Dobbs talk, I reminded yesterday of the interview that Susie Orman gave to CNN, a well-known financial analyst. She said, don't gauge this market based on what you're seeing today, but watch it tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week. Indeed, she said, one day does not a market make. We'll watch it. More coming up shortly. Paula?
Although, as you and I both know, as you watch these numbers go up and down, it's sometimes kind of hard to have that long view.
It can
Thanks,
be tough
Bill.
medicine. Indeed, you're right, Paula.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go back to Annie Serwer and Drew, Andy, a good friend now from Fortune magazine, to give you an even better perspective of what some of you investors might face in the market. Let's look at this Dow Jones intraday chart, graphic. What does it show us?
Well, it shows that we had a precipitous drop at the open, right after the open actually, and we're clawing our way back a little bit. We were as much as 600 down. We're now down about 460. The NASDAQ was down over 100. We're now down only 74, and you really can't say only after some of these drops. You know, it's better than people thought, but it ain't over yet. We got many hours to go. I've seen this, you know, go 100-point swings in a matter of instants. So, you know, the trend is positive right now. We were talking earlier about this being sort of a critical time where people sort of take stock after the first hour and a half of trading and then sort of develop further strategies. But I would say that the trends are good, basically.
And how about on the NASDAQ front?
And you can see there we've really come back a bit from the worst of it. So, you know, you can't really complain. I mean, compared to what you might have anticipated today. And again, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and this is a day that is great fun to watch, really intriguing, very important in terms of the market working and functioning. And I think that's the most important thing, Paula. The market is functioning, it's working. We have had no reports of major and serious disruptions, which is a very, very encouraging sign for American investors.
And along that same note, Lou Dobbs says the market is always right.
It is always right. It's a reflection of sentiment and where people think the prices of businesses are today. And right now, airline stocks, the prices of those businesses have been severely marked down.
And everybody expected that. I mean, some of these airlines were losing anywhere from $100 million a day to $267 million a day from last Tuesday to now, as these airlines are trying to get up and running, as airports have reopened across the country.
I think of all of American industry, this is the one that is going to be impacted the most. I mean, you've seen the tremendous layoff announcements from Continental and Delta already. They're talking about possibly being bankrupt by the end of the year. Obviously, massive government intervention is going to be required here to get this business stabilized.
Yeah, and House Speaker Hastert basically told these airlines they're going to get it. We're moving that legislation along, he said, to give you some short-term relief. Is that enough to change this picture?
It could, actually. That's a very interesting point. You know, people who are selling right now could really be selling at a bottom if a package is announced, a bailout package, a government panel to oversee these airlines. These airlines are not going to go bankrupt, Paula. We need these airlines to run this country. So in some capacity, they're going to exist, and they're going to exist as private enterprises, too.
It is always very dangerous to try to read the tea leaves in Washington, but in your mind, is it all but inevitable they're going to get this bailout?
I think they're going to get a bailout, but I also think there's going to be government oversight. I think that the government is going to get their hands in managing how this works, because it has to. There has to be a concerted effort in terms of security, in terms of flights. The number of flights probably has to drop in this country. Demand for flights may also drop because people may be concerned about flying. The whole business, and as I said before, no business will be more affected in the wake of this terrible episode than the airline business, and we really don't know how it's going to shake out.
Let's bring Lou into the discussion now. Lou, I don't know whether you could hear part of what Andy and I were just talking about, but when you look at these numbers for the airlines, and we'll look at those intraday graphics again, the trend does not seem too positive, and we were talking a little bit about Speaker Hastert in an interview early this morning, telegraphing that he's doing whatever he can to move legislation forward to bail out the airline industry. Will that be enough to turn this around?
Well, to turn around these, what in the cases of the two largest carriers, 40% declines, better than 30% decline in Northwest, no. But will they Are they necessary? Absolutely necessary to keep the airlines moving in this environment in which we're going to see further curtailments and schedules. Absolutely essential. What is the right price? That's what we're finding out in this market now, Paula.
So what is that going to do to the telemarketing industry? I know Andrew was saying that if you have fewer flights, at the same time you might have less of a demand as well. What will be the impact of this shift?
The shift, I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah, you just wonder if there'll be more of an emphasis on teleconferencing and other methods of doing business.
Yes, I would assume so. I know a number of companies have already gone to it. They've had to, particularly here in downtown Manhattan and Wall Street. And it's, again, efficiencies in the marketplace, whether they be within these walls here at the New York Exchange over at the NASDAQ, or whether it be in the way business conducts business at the lowest cost with the maximum effect. We're going to see a lot of it. I'm sure of that.
And one would think, Andy, there's going to be some sort of impact on the rental car industry, the train industry.
Absolutely.
The fallout, does it lead more volume to them?
Absolutely. The rent-a-cars businesses have been booming. People have been trying to get, particularly in the Northeast Corridor, back from Washington over to Boston. It's very hard to get a rent-a-car. I would think this might be a tremendous opportunity for Amtrak because people need to get around, but they may not be able to do it as readily by the airlines.
Lou, if you would, fill us in on the other stocks that are showing some volatility. You mentioned a couple blue chip stocks about a half hour ago. Does that trend continue?
It is continuing. The financials are showing a vulnerability here. We have not seen the hotels and cruise lines hit quite as hard as many had expected, and of course those analysts expecting it to be hit every bit as hard as we've seen the the airlines be hit this morning. So there's some surprise there. Great weakness, but not to the degree that we might have expected. The defense stocks, as you would expect, are rallying here. What we've seen happen in the last about 15 minutes, Paula, is the tick has bounced again. It is negative 174 as I'm talking to you right now. Again, it had been negative almost 10 times that, about 8 times that. And so we've seen some strength. Now there's a contest going on this floor. The contest is between, and rather among, those specialists who believe that this is going to be a sustained turn in this market, and they are mustering the will to hang on here rather than sell stocks. And that's what these gentlemen here to my right are doing. That's what these gentlemen to the left all around me. And we're watching this drama unfold. That is the outcry market that forms the specialist market of the New York Exchange. And they're getting very, very intense about it, as you might expect, with the Dow now off 456 and the tick improving just enough and the up volume picking up just enough to allow that good old motivator in these markets, greed, to take hold.
All right, Lou, thanks so much. We will come back to you frequently to keep us abreast on what's happening down there at the Dow Jones. Andy Serworth, thank you for your time. We will rely on you as well. Let's quickly go back to Washington, D.C., where John has some news for us.
Well, Paula, one quick update. There were supposed to be at the end of this month meetings of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank here in Washington. That one set of meetings, like other recent global economic conferences that have drawn thousands of protesters, sometimes violent protesters here in Washington and around the world. The decision just made, now confirmed by CNN, to postpone those meetings indefinitely. IMF World Bank meetings scheduled to be the 29th and 30th of this month here in Washington. The administration had asked for those meetings to be postponed simply because the District of Columbia Police Department, the Secret Service, the Capitol Police, all in close proximity to where those meetings would be held, that they simply did not have the resources right now to provide the necessary security for the expected protests. And they raised the concerns that if so many demonstrators and protesters were here in Washington, it would be much more easier for individuals who might have other intentions, suspected terrorists, to move about in locations near key government buildings. Paula?
On the heels of that news, I'm wondering if you're getting any new information out of the White House this morning about the efforts to build a coalition as the United States, along with some of its friendlier allies, ponder what to do about how to get whoever's responsible for these deadly attacks.
More telephone calls from both the President and Secretary of State Powell, we are told, will be made today as this effort to build the coalition continues. I had a conversation with a very senior administration official earlier this morning who said they are very encouraged right now. In public, you see the steps being taken by the government of Pakistan. In private, this official said the Saudi Arabian government has given strong promises to the United States that it will do everything it can to crack down. Mr. bin Laden is a Saudi dissident, and he gets a great deal of his funding from wealthy Saudi businessmen. So the Saudi Arabian government, we are told, promising to help as well. Indeed, Prince Bandar, the Saudi ambassador to the United States, held a meeting at his residence over the weekend, we are told, with representatives of other Arab and Middle Eastern nations trying to get them to join the U.S. effort. At the same time, we are also told by sources that the governments of Pakistan and Russia have agreed to share their intelligence information about the bin Laden organization with the United States. That information, senior administration officials say, is key as the President meets this morning at this hour with his national security team and continuing to narrow down the potential military options for a response here. Paula?
Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger was a guest earlier this morning, and he said the role that Russia plays in this coalition, if it plays at all, and you have just acknowledged that it probably will, is critical. But he said to a certain extent that some of these Russian leaders might be getting a sense of enjoyment out of watching how the United States deals with this